Evening and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of Tuesday, October 15th. We're going to start with a call to order.
Okay, Chair Stewart is absent. Vice Chair Tidy Zamora is absent. Commissioner John Dinan. Commissioner Michael Alterman.
Here.
Commissioner Natasha Basso filling in as chair.
Here.
Our Commissioner alternate Steve Link.
Here.
And Commissioner alternate Ben Rubin. I would also want to make an announcement that the channel 2 visual is not working, but the audio is for the people out there in TV world.
Thank you. We'll start with the conflict of interest. Any Planning Commission member or staff who has a direct conflict of interest on any scheduled agenda item to be considered is to declare their conflict at this time. Hearing none, we'll move on. Public comments. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission Board. Individual comments will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes or as stated by the presiding officer and cannot be yielded to another person. Under state law, matters presented during the comment period cannot be discussed or acted upon. For record purposes, please state your name and city of residence and make sure your comments are directed to the Planning Commission members.
Good evening. Hello, commissioners. My name is Karen Conrado. I live at 524 Hook Road. I'm here to just let you know that I oppose the Riverwalk project, and I'm hoping that you look at it carefully, continue to look at it carefully as it comes closer time to look at. For many reasons, the Riverwalk project is not a good idea, as you, I'm sure, are well aware through all of the agency reports that you've received, that have been received. This is prime agricultural land. It's incredibly productive. It has easy access to water, and it's next to the Stanislaus River. It's on a floodplain that has flooded since New Maloney's was built. The water table is very high, and in my opinion, unsuitable for building. Before the New Maloney's Dam was built, there were water spouts, little boils that came up in the middle of the field that was indicative of imminent flooding. There are city service issues that need to be addressed: water, sewer, traffic, lights, emergency personnel, and vehicles. And often I hear comments about that'll be taken care of through the North Corridor or through this agreement with the county or things like that. But I think there's an issue of when those will be addressed and when you can have better traffic roads. There's increased already increased rates for water and sewer, and I think the discussion of more coming. wildlife corridors will be interrupted and destroyed, and therefore the animals that live along the river and travel across this land would be diminished. The one thing I want to note is the general plan that has not yet been approved. Isn't even in the process to be considered as a pending project. It's not even advanced enough for that. And perhaps it should not be included in the housing element. If it is in the housing element, then perhaps the ballot initiative should also be included. As you are aware, there is a ballot measure that passed that will be brought forward in the 2026 general election. And I think for fairness and neutrality, if the Riverwalk information is going to be included in the general plan, then I would think that the additional information should also be included before it comes before you, so you have the full information. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other public comments? Okay, you want to unmute their mic?
Hello,
Hello, we can hear you.
thank you. This is Jamie Agers. I live within the unincorporated area of Stanislaus County.
Thank you. With no more public comments, I will close the public comment period. Moving on to the consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are to be acted upon by a single action of the Planning Commission Board unless requested by an individual Planning Commission member or member of the public for special consideration. Otherwise, the recommendation of staff will be accepted and acted upon by motion of the Planning Commission Board. So we have item 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3. 2.1 is posting of the agenda. The agenda for the October 15th Planning Commission meeting was posted on the City Community Center Bulletin Board, City Hall North and South Bulletin Boards, Post Office, City website, and emailed to the library on October 10th, 2024. Item 2.2, approval of the October 15th, 2024 agenda. Item 2.3, approval of the September 17th, 2024 Planning Commission meetings having been read by the individual planning commissioners and standing approved as submitted. I will entertain a motion.
I move that we approve items 2.1 through 2.3. And I was in attendance as an alternate for the September 17th meeting as well, to note that.
Okay, roll call. Commissioner Rubin,
Yes.
Commissioner Dynan,
Yes.
and Commissioner Alderman.
Yes.
Thank you, that's approved.
Moving on to the Planning Commission public hearings. We have item 3.1, draft 6th cycle housing element update.
Good evening, Commissioners. Miguel Galvez, contract planner with J.B. Anderson Land Use Planning. Also with me this evening is David Niskanen, also a contract planner with J.B. Anderson. We're here to present the draft 6th cycle housing element update. I've included translation, which is in blue text, so you'll see black text. which is in English, and blue text, which is in Spanish. Just a quick refresher. I know we've had a number of meetings on the housing element. The housing element is one of 7 elements of the general plan. Other cities may elect to use optional elements. The 6th cycle housing element covers the period of June 30th, 2023 through December 30th. Element is available now for a 30-day public review period, October 15th through November 14th, 2024. The State of California Department of Housing and Community Development is tasked with reviewing all state housing elements for compliance with the state housing law. So after the public comment period, staff will be submitting the draft housing element to the state for their review. The update process has included workshops. As you know, we held one community workshop. We held a stakeholder workshop, presentations for the Planning Commission and City Council. And today is the formal announcement of the availability of the 6th cycle housing element for starting of the 30-day public review period. In the update, we examine housing needs. We examine an inventory of available property that can be used to help meet the housing needs of the community as identified by the regional housing needs allocation. We reviewed housing policies and programs and provided updates and recommendations in that. The draft public housing element will be presented to the City Council on November 12th, 2024. And at that time, we'll be asking the City Council to authorize staff to submit the draft housing element 6th cycle, along with any comments that are submitted during the 30-day review period as approved in consultation with city staff. As I mentioned, once the comment period ends on November 14th, staff will review all comments and make amendments and track changes format. That's the way the state wants it. This edited version is then presented to the state to start their 90-day public or 90-day review period. At the conclusion of the 90-day review period, HCD will provide a comment letter identifying areas that need to be addressed to meet the state's housing law requirements. Edits that are made to the draft house element will be conducted by staff, and those will be presented to the Planning Commission and City Council for adoption. The adopted housing law, at the end, the state does a final review, and we're hoping that they will say, you know what, you've met all the state law requirements, you're in compliance with state housing law. Briefly, the housing element contents include the following components. They're listed there. Introduction, a community profile, discusses financial resources, housing constraints, energy conservation opportunities, a review of the prior housing element, a housing action plan, and includes an appendices that has support information about our journey thus far. And the journey really started with the regional housing needs allocation. Once again, the city is required to plan for the state projected housing needs that were adopted under the local. Overall, the city has to plan to provide opportunities for the development of 3,542 housing units, must serve the 672 together. So again, 3,591 have to serve the low-income households. Here's a copy of table category. The allocation to be met is in blue text, as I mentioned a minute ago. The city's holding capacity is in red text. You can see on the bottom. The city's current housing capacity is 3,384 units. Of that, about 1,200 can be allocated to the low-income areas. Then you got moderate and above moderate. But our key challenge is to try to meet the housing needs of the low-income areas. The shortfall at the bottom here in the purple is that we need to accommodate 436 low-income housing units and 354 moderate-income housing units. We exceed the above moderate category there of 704. So that's really the challenge when we look at our housing sites inventory. What can the city do to help meet the housing needs of the low and very low income categories? To meet this shortfall, The state has identified the following criteria in looking at sites. The sites have to be suitable and available. The utilities have to be available, city utilities, city sewer, water, storm drainage, and they have to meet the regional housing needs allocation income categories. The zoning has to be appropriate. The lot has to meet state law requirements that deals with density and parcel size. And it also has to meet fair housing requirements. And that goes with, no concentration of low-income areas or low-income housing in specific areas concentrated within the city. With input from the community, staff identified a number of sites that have the potential to meet the RENA's low-income categories. Here's a list of properties. These are listed by assessor's parcel number that can be developed at a minimum density of 20 units per acre to satisfy the RENA low-income category. The state of California has made a determination that apartments that are developed at 20 units per acre are sufficient to meet the very low and low-income category. And so that's an important I want to say policy issue that the city is going to have to adopt is when it comes to meeting our arena numbers, that when it comes to apartments, we need to at least have a minimum density of 20 units per net acre. All of these parcels that are listed here can accommodate 1,656 low-income units to meet the arena allocation as mentioned. Here's a map of the properties identified that can be rezoned to R3 or upzone or to mixed use. One of the issues or one of the strategies we're looking at is to ask the city to consider rezoning properties that perhaps are commercial to a mixed use zoning classification. And the mixed use zoning classification will allow multifamily development by right, again, at a minimum density of 20 units per acre. So these are some of the properties. The darker properties are those that received lots of interest, or I should say votes. You say, yeah, these are properties that we should, certainly look at to help meet the RENA numbers for the low and very low income categories. The lighter colors received less votes, and they didn't receive any votes, but we identified their costs, which is outlined in red there. I want to focus on a couple of the key goals and policies. Staff review the housing goals and policies, and policy 1.2 there at the bottom is to maintain an inventory of vacant and underutilized residential lands. This will require a comprehensive plan to rezone some of the candidate sites to serve the regional housing needs allocation by income category. So upon adoption of the house element, staff is going to be tasked to identify which properties they're going to rezone, and so will require additional subsequent effort to look at the subsequent public hearings and things like that to rezone these candidate sites. As I mentioned, we're also looking at amending not only rezoning, but also amending the land use designation, the zoning district, the zoning ordinance, when it comes to mixed use housing, as I mentioned, the ability to develop multifamily housing together with commercial, because whether it's commercial on the bottom and residential on top or side by side. So one thing is to amend the zoning map. The other thing is to amend the zoning code. And here we're talking about, to be more specific, to amend the zoning district permitted uses to identify a minimum density of 20 units per net acre. And that'll be when an applicant comes to the counter, it'll be something for staff to kind of keep in mind as they meet with the applicants. Like, okay, you're proposing multifamily. We want to make sure that you meet our minimum needs allocation. We want to know these are some requirements up front. When it comes to inclusionary zoning, that was discussed at some of our workshops. But until we get clear direction from the city council, majority of the city council. This is just an option that can be included at final adoption. There has been interest about inclusionary zoning for particular single-family development. When it comes to single-family development, that would require a certain number of units be set aside for low-income residents, and there's different programs that exist throughout the valley and some that can be developed to give, usually it's moderate income households, an opportunity to get into the single-family housing world, if you will. Under policy 5.1, it's a new policy. It's to host a housing summit, excuse me, or a housing fair. And that's to provide a series of workshops, whether for new property owners or landlords, and, you know, or someone that wants to look at what does it take to get into a mortgage, how much can I afford, or working with different nonprofit housing developers, what can the residents do to apply for some of these programs? So it's kind of like a housing summer. Come and learn about housing, how to be a good landlord, how to be a good tenant, you know, how to improve your credit. And that's something that can be regional. You know, we usually invite bankers, mortgage companies, we invite builders, and a variety of folks. Other cities usually participate. So looking at the timeline, today starts the 30-day public review period. As I mentioned, it ends on November 14th. The next meeting on November 12th, actually, council will be asked to authorize staff to submit the draft house element with public comments, identify and track changes, format to HCD. That's what they want. After submitted, HCD requires a 90-day review period to review the draft housing element, and they provide comments to the city. By and large, statewide, the cities usually receive a comment letter from the HCD is anywhere from 10 to 20 pages long. It's quite extensive. Staff then will revise the housing element to address the HCD comments. And then the final draft is scheduled for a public hearing before both the Planning Commission and City Council for final adoption. And finally, the housing element is sent back to the state for final compliance review. So that takes us to about April 2025. But you can see the dates there that we've listed. There's no formal action required this meeting. Staff encourages the commission to open up the public hearing. But really the intent was to begin the public review process. This is a draft housing element. Staff kind of formed it. We have a team of staff. But it's not our document, it's a community's document. We ask you to participate, to review, to comment on it, to put your fingerprints on it, you know, your thoughts. And once the comments are submitted, they can be submitted to Josh Mann here at City Hall, or they can be submitted on the web link there at Riverbank Housing at riverbank.org. But I was saying, the document here, although it has coil binding, it's not set in stone. It's living, it's breathing. So take a look at it. Give us your comments on it. That would be helpful. This is a community document, and we encourage your participation. Again, please submit comments by November 14th, 2024. That concludes my presentation. Staff is available to respond to questions. After the public hearing, you know, we're available to answer questions at that time as well. If there's any questions, we're available.
Curiosity question. Are different cities on a different timelines within the state?
Yes, actually, the state has divided the different council of governments into different areas, because this is a lot of work for ACD to read. So they They kind of have Southern California, the LA area, San Francisco, and they kind of stage them all. So we're all under different timelines, and Central Valley is usually the last. We usually get saddled with them, in my opinion, the most regional house needs allocation. And that's kind of like leftover from what the other council governments don't want to do or choose not to do.
I have a comment. I want to thank staff for getting copies of this to us a few days in advance, so we had time to review it. That was great. Thank you.
If you have
I have
questions
questions.
first, yeah, go for it.
So who initiates a rezone or an upzone? Does the property owner have to do that, or does staff do it if they see the potential of that being a multi-use? And then does it change the value of that person's property?
That's a good question. It can be done a number of ways. If you own a property, you can take the initiative to submit an application to rezone or to amend the general plan. When it comes to the housing sites that are identifying the house element, that's something that staff will take the initiative to do. They will select the property. All this is going to be, it'll go through a general plan amendment, a rezoning, public hearings. It'll involve the public, the property owners as well. And the intent again is to help meet the regional housing needs allocation for the city. There's due processes followed and it'll be up to staff to follow up on that.
Oh, for the housing summit, now, who would coordinate such an event like that? Is that something the city does, or industry people would do that?
A person here, Leticia, to help with that. But more importantly, I see that as a regional effort. It would require coordination with like the county, the city of Modesto, because they're also, there's an opportunity for them to benefit and serve their clients as well. So it should be a team effort. So from the city, I would expect someone from the housing staff here.
Got a third one. Sorry. So, who qualifies to be someone that can comment on this? I mean, unincorporated area of the county, can
Anyone can come
someone
on it.
outside of the area comment on this? Someone
Yeah, you can.
Waterford, or
Anyone can comment on the housing element, whether you live inside the city or outside the city and in the unincorporated area. You know, to respond to the question earlier today is the Riverwalk specific plan incorporated into the housing element? Since the property is outside of the city limits, we do not factor that in to help meet our RENA numbers. We acknowledge that's coming up, but we're not counting on it to meet the regional housing needs allocation. So it's not necessarily we don't have a program to incorporate that, but anyone can comment on it.
I have a question. I believe it was it looks like B1-10. This is, it has the parcel numbers, the acres. You mentioned that 20 units per net acre is considered, that meets the criteria to be considered affordable.
Yes.
So it doesn't take into consideration, if it's apartments, what the rents will actually be, whether or not, because rents have gone up. So it's really just the units per acre that is kind of required to consider it affordable.
That's very true. Someone can very well develop at 20 units per acre and make law. And state law says, usually people do like a lesser density, like 15 or 16 units, or you're doing 20. To make that pencil out, sometimes you have to go higher, and usually the rents are cheaper where there's higher density.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none, I will open up the public comment period. Is there any public comment on the draft? Yes, come on up to the podium. Please state your name.
Hi, this is Vivian Lopez. I reside on Roselle Avenue. So I was just thinking about the information that he was presenting right now, Mr. Galvez. And he said about the very low and then the low area for the arena to be able to qualify. And so right now, he just mentioned, I know it's 20 units per acre. And so what buy-in from developers to reach or attain that very low to low? Will the state reprimand the city for that? I was just curious to know, what if we don't reach? Because it is very difficult to be able to reach the affordability housing, which is 30% of a person's income.
That's a very good question. I'm going to go to the next slide here, which is, this is the Stanislaus area median area income. For 2023, a family of four, the median income is 92,600. If you have a family of four, I'll just say low income is $67,500. So if apartments are built and they're not rented or rentable to folks that are in that income category. A couple of things I kind of have seen that happen is that the apartments will be built, but not all of the apartments have low income rents. A portion of them will. And some of the apartments may be developed to different standards instead of marble or granite countertops, it might be formica. So the standards are different. So there's different ways that developers can use to reduce the cost that they have to assume to provide these housing units. At the end, our goal is to provide housing. For me, working in this industry, one thing is always providing housing opportunities. I think the other part of it is really helping people raise their income. That's like a second foot, if you will, to someone walking into housing. Not only should the housing be available, they should have adequate income to afford that, and there should be programs for that. Unfortunately, the state doesn't require us to do that. It's more defer to local businesses and things like that.
Yes, go ahead.
Vivian Lopez again. So I'm just curious, and I'm wondering that when we do have developers come in that are gonna build a housing project, is it possible for the city to require that they have a certain percentage population? I'm just wondering if that's something that Riverbank can do. Is that something that other cities do? That's my question.
With your permission, I will respond. Many local jurisdictions are able to procure funding, whether it's the state or the federal government, that subsidize distance. The developers are required through an affordable housing covenant to make the units affordable, but also to rent them to low-income residents. So these are affordability covenants that run with the land. Usually those are good for 55 years. So it's important to have a housing element that's up to date, because you're then eligible to apply for some of the state financing opportunities. Usually there's tax credits, there's a number of housing opportunities that the city can pursue. It would require the city to do annual monitoring, to go and actually look at people's, income statements and see what their rents are, what their contractor rents are, to make sure they are meeting the letter of the law for any affordability covenants that are associated with the development. that comes through any type of subsidized financing.
So actually, Miguel, if I could, may ask for clarification there. So it sounds like what you're saying is there are ways that the city could potentially through their either municipal code or zoning ordinance, sort of mandate a portion of it, but it requires, number one, the housing element to be current and also, a covenant with the builder. So generally it's like a state or federal funded program that would provide money for the city to subsidize to the developers to ensure that they can make these housing elements affordable and to people that are in those lower incomes to go to it. So it's a thing with the state, and the city would have to get aligned with that.
Yeah, I think there's two different ideas here. One is financial assistance through the state and federal governments, and those require affordable rents, rented to low-income residents. The other is like an inclusionary housing policy that says, a certain number have to be, whether single-family homes or apartments, have to be set aside for people that are low income. And these are discussions that usually take place when people are submitting applications at the counter or meeting with staff in advance. We say, hey, we're looking at this. And that's where we say, welcome to our housing element. Here are some of the things that we're looking to providing to our residents in our community. And, one of the good things that the city has is the small homes ordinance, where actually there's a number of developers that I've spoken with that are interested in developing tiny homes in our community. And that goes a long way to really meeting, they're tiny homes, but they're single family, they're detached housing, and they provide a variety of benefits. And the city should be commended for really having that type of foresight, really to reach out in advance of a lot of these zoning code amendments and rezoning. So it's an additional opportunity for people to get into the home ownership.
Thank you. Another thing, and I'm just reiterating to make sure I understand this well. The housing element, we've been given this RENA number from, of our goals. The responsibility of the city is to make sure the land is available to reach those goals. It is not the responsibility of the city to ensure that those houses are built. Is that correct?
You're absolutely correct. I sound like a broken record. I feel that the city is not required to build the units. The city is required to identify land where the units can be built by the private side. The city can certainly pursue, as I said, federal and state funding that will help that, but usually they partner up with a nonprofit affordable housing developer to do that. But yeah, the city's not required to build the units, only just to make the land zone where it can accommodate that type of housing.
I get that question a lot as well. Why is the city doing this? Why is the city doing that? Well, the developer is doing this. The city is just making sure they comply. So that's a similar question. Thank you.
Do we have any other public comment? Any other questions from the commissioners? Okay, I will close the public comment period. And we don't need a motion on this?
So we do need a motion to take it to the city council.
Recommend it to the city council?
I move we recommend item 3.1 as cited.
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call. Chair Basso,
Yes.
Commissioner Link,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubin, Commissioner Dynan,
Yes,
and Commissioner Alterman.
Yes.
Okay, that's approved by vote.
Okay, moving on, planning commission comments. Do any commissioners have comments?
very impressed with this.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead and open it back up.
okay, we can reopen the public comment. Oh, okay,
Cancel that.
we will close the public comment. Okay. Oh, is she back? Okay. Public comment period is closed. We're going to move on to planning commission comments.
Just repeat, it's a very impressive document.
I agree. That was pretty good. I did have actually a couple other things. I've been, recently I, participated in an online presentation. This is just information I would like to share with the commission and the public. As you know, the North County Corridor Phase 1 is going to be starting soon. I was, involved in that project will be going out to bid soon. Formal construction is, intended to start in the spring. And that's gonna be a lot of traffic, disruptions, a lot of construction stuff going on. I just kind of wanted to make everybody aware of that and how that'll impact, especially, south and southeast Riverbank. So once we get there, be prepared for detours and other such niceties.
Thank you. County referral, correspondence, or information?
Good evening, Chair Basso, members of the Planning Commission. We do have one item tonight that was referred from Stanislaus County. It's a use permit application for Horizon Landscaping. It looks like they're proposing a wholesale nursery at 1367 Crawford Road. If you're familiar with the area, it's just between Coffee and Oakdale Road, kind of where the old Crawford dead ends on the unincorporated side. So typically, the county will refer projects like this that are within the city's sphere of influence. Per our agreement, or per the city's agreement with the county, we do have the ability to impose certain conditions, or if the use is not compatible with our general plan, we could kind of identify that and respond back to the county. So just wanted to kind of make you guys aware of that. I don't particularly see an issue with this proposed business, but I'd like to open it up if the commission has any specific comments or concerns with it, and you could let me know.
Do we want to ask any questions on that now?
I'll just clarify. I looked at the address on this. That's on the section of Crawford Road that no longer directly connects back into the city, correct? So
That's correct, yes.
So I mean, I get it. We'll eventually be backing up to them, but I think at this time, it's probably not a conflict. So.
And people who live in that area, they get notified by the county of any of the permits or changes that are happening?
Yeah, that's correct. The county has their own notification process. It's very similar to ours, where they will notify the surrounding neighbors. There will be a public hearing that their planning commission ultimately has to make a decision on their application.
Okay, so we don't need to notify them ourselves. Good. Any other questions? Thank you. Moving on, staff comments.
Good evening again. Yeah, I just wanted to go over a couple items that we saw, I believe, at our last meeting. Heritage 2 subdivision and the Turpin Avenue exception and parcel map were both forwarded on to the city council, and both projects received approval from the city council. So both of those will be moving forward. Heritage 2, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but they're actually already grading their property, kind of trying to get ahead of the winter. So if you see any action out there, that's what that is. Also, just wanted to point out, in terms of future applications this planning commission may see, we do have kind of an exciting new application on Patterson Road, the vacant property just east of Dutch Brothers. So we received a new application. I'll call it a shopping center, although it's not really a shopping center. It will have two kind of anchor major tenants and then two drive-through restaurants or fast food restaurants within there. At that major tenant will be also kind of on a residential or apartments multifamily side. We received an apartment application at Morel. This is the property. You'll notice a lot of ducks kind of congregate out there. It's a triangle, odd-shaped piece. So we did receive, I believe it's a 48-unit apartment complex and private park So we'll be processing that application. You guys will see it pretty soon here.
Yeah, right by the canal.
Yes, adjacent to the canal. I believe if you're looking north of this property, it would be between Jackson and Howard.
Interesting.
That concludes my comments for tonight. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
You? Any questions? No? Well, that concludes our planning commission meeting. The next planning commission meeting is scheduled for November 19th at 6 p.m. Thank you.